As we transition, I want you to think about the next time you go to the job. Yes, you walk into the workplace. You happen to be standing at the water cooler, and what do you say? Well, maybe you're talking about the baseball game. Pretty soon, you might be talking about the Commanders. And then there's that whole politics thing. Yeah, maybe you lean to the right, someone else leans to the left, vice versa. It's all there. The question is, should you do it while at the job? Well, we're going to discuss it. I'm pleased to say I'm joined now by Mr. Richard Birke, Chief Analyst of JAMS Pathways, kind enough to join us right here on the Live Zone. Richard, truly a pleasure to meet you, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I should make mention that JAMS Pathways offers an integrated and fresh approach to problem solving. And boy, do we all need help with solving a lot of the problems, especially at the workplace. You just heard me make mention, and obviously we are covering Hunter Biden, the top story of the day. And I would assume that a lot of folks, after watching this, they're going to take a break, go to the bathroom and stand at that water cooler you heard me make mention of, and perhaps they will then get into a political discussion. What say you, sir, about that? Is that something smart to do while at the workplace?
So unless you work for a politician, you're working on a campaign, or maybe you work for a think tank, political discussions very rarely further the mission of the organization. And so I think that for the most part, they're to be avoided. The last thing I want when I sit down in a dental chair is for my hygienist and my dentist to just have had a political argument about anything related to the news. And so I think you got to be very, very careful about politics at the workplace. Best to avoid those discussions if you can.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, I would say. I can tell you several times, and not at this location, my place of work now. Obviously, I'm at a news organization, but I remember when I worked as a receptionist, gosh, years ago, and that just happened to be the big discussion. And quite honestly, people would get really heated. With regard to the manager aspect, someone that's in charge and someone that can really direct the employees as to which way they should go, what should he or she do? What's the foundation they should lay with regard to politics at the workplace?
Well, the first thing I think you need to do is to have some pretty clear rules and policies. And so it extends to not just the things that people say, but, can you wear a T-shirt that advertises a candidate or a political cause? So I think you need to have rules and policies in place, and they need to be enforced quickly, publicly, and fairly. I think a second thing that managers can do is, very skillful redirection. We talk about the right to free speech, and that's a very important right enshrined in our Constitution, but it's not unlimited. You don't get to, shout fire in a crowded theater. And so we talk about time, place, and manner. So I think a skillful manager would redirect those conversations to, a time outside of work. And finally, I think a manager needs to do something I call modeling reframing. It's often the case that a political issue really relates to an underlying interest, and the interest may be something like, feeling safe in the street. It may be about economics, and the underlying issues are more safe to talk about than the political ramifications or the news stories that might be top of mind on that day.
Yeah. Richard, obviously, all things that we all need to take into consideration and, quite honestly, perhaps practice, I would say. You heard me touch on this whole water cooler thing, and I know I keep on talking about that, and that's the actual, let's say, the physical portion of it all, meaning I'm standing next to someone and can actually have a conversation. But in this day and age, sir, we have something known as emails, and I can tell you I get a lot of them. And so what if, from a political standpoint, I happen to be forwarding and or sending emails that maybe someone else doesn't necessarily agree with?
So you really need to be about as careful can be when you're sending an email. I spent 25 years as a law professor, and every couple of years a student would send around or forward an email that they didn't even realize the political impact and the impact that it had on psychological safety. You want to be careful that things that you're sending around don't make anybody feel like a second-class citizen, and certainly as a manager, you want to be careful that it doesn't create a hostile work environment, because that could result in a lawsuit or an employment discrimination case.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we let you go,
I'm super careful about your email. I just want to say, I think, you want to be super careful about email, and also the same thing goes for any Zoom session that might be recorded.
Yeah. Yeah, before we let you go, Richard, I just want you to touch on the importance of making sure we all stay professional. I cannot say that enough, and I would I would assume that you would recommend the same thing, specifically surrounding one's political affiliation and, or let's say even religious beliefs, what have you. Respect others.
Well, the foundation of a healthy workplace, as I said, is psychological safety, and that means that you pay attention to the mission and that you respect your coworkers the way you want to be respected. We all could do well to, obey the platinum rule, not treat others as you'd like to be treated. Treat everybody the way you think that the world ought to be. So, treating people with, incredible respect and being careful to not intrude on things that are going to prevent them from taking care of business at work.
Yeah.
Super important.
Very well said, sir. Once again, Mr. Richard Birke, Chief Architect of JAMS Pathways. Truly a pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you so very much for coming on.